You're listening to Big World Network.
Just Kill Me, Episode 9, Distraction. Written by Wendy Herman. Read by Wendy Herman. I felt a little nauseated. I read the text again, but that just increased my confusion. I read it a third time, this time dissecting it one word at a time. Spoke to AR. AR? Who the hell has assignment changed? Assignment? Since I was certain Trevor and Talia were not taking a creative writing course at the community college together, this word birthed several tangent thought streams, none of them good. Will continue mission. Mission? This did not seem to be a secret love note from a mistress, but then what exactly was it? Until told otherwise, A.M. A.M. on Talia Mitchell. That was the only part of the message that was easy to figure out, but only on the surface. What the hell was I looking at? It was so formal and encrypted, I couldn't help but think it was official in some way. Why was my best friend sending a seemingly official text to my husband, whom she'd barely spent 10 minutes with in 3 years, at 10:30 at night? My mind reeled. I couldn't form a coherent thought, and within seconds my brain was so noisy I slammed my eyes shut in an attempt to quiet it and focus. I suddenly felt a little dizzy, and my nausea increased tenfold. The forgotten bagel still on the counter, I turned and, almost robotically, carried the phone up the stairs, into the master bedroom, and straight through to the master bathroom, where Trevor was toweling off. I walked right up to him. He smiled at me, but his smile waned when he saw what was in my hand. "You got a text," I said, not recognizing the sound of my own voice. He dropped the towel on the floor and took his phone from me. "Thanks," he said hesitantly. He pushed the small button to restore the screen and was as still as a statue, staring at the text. Not being one to intentionally prolong my own suffering, I dove headfirst into the pit of hungry crocodiles. "That's Talia's number." His eyes locked on mine then, first shocked, then confused, but it was... what was it? It was forced confusion. I wasn't having any of it. "Explain," I stated. He set the phone down on the bathroom counter and quickly slid on his clean boxers. I waited. "It's not Talia's number," he finally replied, but it had come after too long a pause, too much time to think of a lie. "Yes, it is." He shimmied past me and left the bathroom. I watched him put the phone on his dresser. Noticing I hadn't moved, I couldn't, he returned to me and wrapped both arms around my neck. He stared into my eyes. His were ice blue and so sparkly. I felt my anger subside just a tiny bit. Damn him. "Baby, I promise you I did not get a text from Talia." I thought about that word, promise. I would never use that beautiful word for evil, but I suddenly wasn't sure about this man I had just been intimate with. He had proved time and again in the past weeks that he had a side I hadn't been aware of before, a dark side. I had married Anakin Skywalker, but now he seemed to be turning into Darth Vader. If I didn't think there was a possibility he was hiding something from me, something big, I would totally be into it. "I know her number, Trevor. She's my best friend." He sighed in a slightly condescending way, which elevated my anger back up to Mount Vesuvius level, and released one nervous chuckle. "Sweetie, is it possible you don't really know her number? I mean, you just select her name in your phone, right? You don't actually dial the number by hand. No one does that anymore." "That's true," I admitted, "but that doesn't mean I don't know her number." He grasped my shoulders and tried to penetrate the wall behind my eyes. "Freya, listen to me. That text was from a client of mine. He works with Rip, Adam Michaels. He even mentioned Rip, A.R., Agent Ripley." He gently released my shoulders, but continued his assault on my eyes. He smiled. "I have to admit, I do love it when you're jealous. It doesn't happen very often, but it just makes me feel good. Like you love me so much you don't want to share me." He turned and sauntered back into the bedroom, stopping at his dresser for an old t-shirt. As he pulled it on over his head, he sat on the end of the bed. He seemed so comfortable, like a man with nothing to worry about, not like a man who was hiding a mistress or a secret identity. I started to think I had been acting irrational. "I wasn't accusing you of cheating," I clarified. "The text itself is too businesslike." I had to think about this before I continued. "It just didn't make sense, a text like that coming from Talia," I concluded. "Of course not," he agreed, "because it didn't come from Talia." I finally willed my legs to move and joined him on the end of the bed. He put his arm around me. "Let's just forget about it and go to sleep, huh?" he offered. "I know I'm exhausted after, well, you know what you did," he teased, leaning down and kissing my shoulder. His lips left a tingly spot on my skin that lingered for a moment. Did he purposely drag his feet across the carpet before touching me, or was he simply made of electricity? I just wasn't ready to let it go. 412-555-8789. "What?" he asked, his lips so close to my face still, I detected just a hint of garlic from supper on his breath. "Talia's number." He sighed, normal this time, and stood up. "All right, let me put this to rest once and for all." He strode over to his dresser and picked up his phone. He pushed the restore button and read off the screen. 412-555-8987. "Is that her number?" he asked. I couldn't believe it. I had gotten it wrong. I had misread the numbers and had created this whole uncomfortable situation in my head. My stupid, overactive imagination. Curse my creative brain. "I'm so sorry," was all I could say. I blushed with embarrassment. Trevor put the phone down and came back to me. "Don't be. It's resolved now." He started kissing my shoulder again and moved to my neck. "You are so sexy when you're jealous." Could he really be getting in the mood again so soon? Men. "Well," I interrupted, "what about the wording? Why is one of your clients using words like mission and assignment?" "I told you," he said between kisses, which were getting steadily wetter. "He's a friend of Rip's. All those secret agent types talk like that." Shit, that made perfect sense. "One more thing." "Is that a new phone?" I asked, trying not to sound accusatory. "Yeah, company made us all get the exact same one last week. Stupid idea. People are already picking up the wrong ones in the restrooms," he said absent-mindedly. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. After shutting down the part of my brain labeled unfounded paranoia, I turned to face Trevor, who had slid his hand under my sleep shirt and was firmly massaging my breast. Our lips met and I welcomed the current that vibrated through me. When was the last time this happened? "Shut up, Freya. This gorgeous man wants to pleasure you. Again." Apparently, Venus and Mars were still slow dancing in the sky. God love 'em. The next morning I was in such a great mood. The whole night before was a blur, except for the really good parts. It was Saturday, so I let the boys sleep in. Trevor had to go into the office for a few hours, and then he said he could spend the rest of the weekend with us. I just smiled like a good wife and slapped him in the ass before he stepped out to the garage. I was enjoying my first cup of almond chai when Talia burst through the back door. I swear, she didn't just walk, she bounced everywhere she went. She subsequently bounced over to the table in the atrium where I was sitting and plopped down in the chair across from me. "Good morning, Tal," I greeted. "What are you doing here on a Saturday? Shouldn't you still be in bed?" She wasn't a party girl, but she was addicted to Netflix and tended to have Friday night movie marathons. It was a little sad because she never wanted company for these extravaganzas, but preferred to be alone with her remote, her Dr. Pepper, and a giant bowl of peanut M&Ms. How she stayed so thin, I'll never know. "Ha ha, very funny," was all she said. I set my cup down after a long, satisfying draw and considered her for a moment. "Lars has a class this morning, doesn't he?" I asked. How had I missed the workout garb? It must have been all that bouncing. She gave me a sheepish grin. She didn't have to say anything. Sorry, can't go. The boys are still asleep and Trevor had to work this morning. On a Saturday? Just for a few hours, miss. I don't have to answer to anyone but myself, I jibed. She gave me a sour look while she redid her ponytail. Stop pouting, I said, feeling like her parent. You're a big girl. Go to the class by yourself. Oh, I intend to, she informed me. Suddenly her cell phone buzzed and she pulled it out of her hoodie pocket. I noticed something was different. Did you get a new case? I asked, suddenly having flashbacks of the night before. I got a new phone, duh. Remember I dropped my old one in the parking lot last week and it dumped all my contacts? I vaguely remembered something about Talia dropping her phone, but didn't recall it warranting getting a new one. Oh, yeah, I said leadingly, hoping she would give me more information. She didn't disappoint. I told you this, didn't I? She inquired as her fingers became a blur, replying to the text that had caused the initial buzzing. I took it to the place where I bought it, and they couldn't retrieve my contacts, so they said I could get a new one because I'd bought the insurance. Thank you for making me do that, by the way, she strayed, glancing up at me. I nodded, and she returned her gaze to the tiny screen in front of her. Anyway, I decided to get a new number, too, because of that creep I met at that speed dating fiasco last month. You know, the one who called me like 10 times in 1 hour? She shuddered at the memory. Now that rang a bell. She finished her reply text and put her phone back in her pocket. She looked up at me and smiled, then cocked her head in question. Didn't I tell you about that? I squinted as if to say I wasn't sure. I realized I hadn't tried to call or text her in over a week. She was always just a few steps away if I needed her. I didn't require technology to contact someone who lived practically in my backyard and who rarely left her house. I felt even sillier about my suspicions of Trevor the previous night. Even if Talia had texted him, which I was 110% sure she hadn't, I wouldn't have recognized the number in the first place. Oddly, however, I was glad that I had accused Trevor, when the alternative might have been ignorant bliss. I refused to be one of those clueless wives. I preferred informed bliss. Suddenly my phone rang behind me on the kitchen counter. Rip's ringtone. I stood and took 2 giant steps to retrieve it, hitting the answer button just as Jack Black was starting the chorus of Tribute. It was Rip's favorite song, and it always made me smile when I heard it. Hello, good-looking, I said, more enthusiastically than I intended. Hey, beautiful. You're in a good mood this morning, he commented. Well, I'm about to make it even better. Your clearance came through. You start phase 2 on Monday.
You're listening to Big World Network.